Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, Jeremy, as always, here trying to make the world seem a little more normal. Does it ever really happen? Come on, let's be honest. Even though it's 9 o'clock in the morning here, let's be honest, it doesn't really happen. But today, we might actually reach that normality a little bit, but we'll see. And of course, I brought a guest to help me on this great quest. And my guest today is Robert Christopher Copez, author of several books, but most recently, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and that's what he's an expert on, folks, is NDEs, or near-death experiences, and we're going to, as you know in this show, we love that, so we're going to find more about that today. How you doing today, Robert?
I'm fine, wonderful today. It's King's Day in the Netherlands, a lot of festivities going on. Thank you for
Sounds like
being on your show.
my pleasure to have you on. I one of my, that's actually one of the topics I started the show with was NDEs, and it's so to return to it after all this time is always a nice thing. It's not something we get out a lot in this because a lot of people don't want to specialize in that because it's a grim topic, it really is, and but it's also an uplifting topic because these people escaped it and they have experiences that are mind blowing to tell about. So, which we're gonna get into all that in a little bit, I'm sure. So, but the first question I'd like to ask everybody on this show is, what got you into the paranormal spiritual world? What made you want to take that path?
Okay. Well, in the paranormal world is interesting. It has to do with spirituality. I was spiritual also as a child. But when I read the book by Raymond Moody, Life After Life, that's where the term near-death experience was coined. He did that. So I read his book long ago when I was in my 20s. And I was surprised by one of the stories in it because that was a woman who spoke about her near-death experience. And in her near-death experience, she had a life review. And in her life review, she noticed that no one was judging her. And the point is that I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, with hell and purgatory. And I was always thinking that's a horrible story. And I didn't really believe it until I came across this a book by Raymond Moody. And I thought, I'm right. There is no hell, no purgatory, because there is no judgment. So they have it sort of wrong, that little part, and because we all go home. And that when I studied NDEs, I got the confirmation that we all go home. That's where it all comes from.
Which is to find out that there is no judgment is something that I think a lot of people would find relief in because I was raised Protestant Christian, so I too purgatory wasn't really a topic as much, but we were raised with the idea of heaven and hell, and you're
Yeah.
good, you go here, you're bad, you go here. But it's a scare tactic. That's what religions have used it for thousands of years, is a scare tactic that listen to us, do what we tell you, or bad things will happen when you die. Like it's a scare tactic. That's all they ever used it for.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
It was a scare tactic. Yeah, and you have to understand that so many people in religions, not only in Roman Catholicism or in Protestantism, but also in other religions, have been scared to death, and and they are afraid of dying. And it goes on. It's horrible. What the consequences are of that scare tactic.
yeah, it's I as all the listeners of my show know, I have a thing against organized religion just because of all the things they have done in the past and to some degree are still doing. A lot of them have calmed down. A lot of them have calmed down dramatically because they realize they're losing membership now, and more people are becoming just spiritual and not religious. So they have to kind of change with the times for the most part. But I would say the Catholics are the ones that are resisting that the most because the Pope likes to do what the Pope wants to do. So it
Yeah.
is what it is. I've never been Catholic, so I don't like to comment too much on it because I've never been in that life. But I've heard enough that
Yeah.
it's not a good thing. But and the funny thing is, though, I'm sure we're gonna hear about it from you as well. But I I had a guest in the show back 2 years ago almost now, who had near death experience and actually she believes she actually went to hell for a minute before she came back.
Hmm.
And so I mean I like to think that hell is not really what they make it out to be a religion. I like to think that hell is just another dimension. And I mean, I don't know what's in charge or who's in charge of it, but there is another dimension that bears similarities to what certain religious books talk about. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's we can get into those theories in a bit, but it is the whole massive theories of what these dimensions are or who resides there. I mean, it's a it's an interesting topic to really get into, but
Yeah, and actually, you're talking about distressing NDEs, and probably the person, the woman who spoke to you in your podcast had a distressing NDE. So there are distressing NDEs. Most NDEs are blissful and very happy, and there's an unconditional love, and there's no judgment and stuff like that. But a minority of the NDEs do have distressing elements. And sometimes a subset of that, there you have hellish environments that people see, and maybe yeah. And what I understand from my research and from what other researchers did, is that distressing NDEs, you cannot say that bad people will only have distressing NDEs and that good people will have blissful ones. And that is an important conclusion, because it means that we need to find another reason why some people do have a distressing NDE. So any one of us could have a distressing NDE. And the cause for that could be that still in the first phase of dying, there are still unconscious things popping up from our collective unconscious or from your own unconscious. And there are examples of people with distressing NDEs, and there's a woman, maybe you mentioned that one, someone who, Kathy McDaniel, who wrote this book, Misfit in Hell, to have an expat. Um, she
she was a previous guest, yes.
Yeah. Well, the point that she tried to make is that because of her upbringing, also as Roman Catholic with hell and purgatory, that she was afraid, so much afraid, that she created in her mind a hellish environment. And moreover, there were some topics in her life where she had a fear of attracting AIDS, and she was raped a few times. And those instances popped up during her NDE and made her see AIDS-like things and rape and prostitution kind of things in her NDE. Yet, if you look at her life, she's a normal person, nothing special. I mean, she's a nice lady, really very nice person, but she's not a bad person. And moreover, how do
No.
you define bad and good? But there are other examples, like Daniel Brinkley. He says of himself that he is a very bad person. He was a bad person because he was in countless fights in schools. He stole people bikes and stole a lot of other things. And then he went working for this American organization where he had to go abroad to other countries and shoot down adversaries of the US. And he said that was horrible what I did, because he saw his life review and he saw what he did to others. And you see a life review in a very particular way. You see that as if you are that other person. And that's overwhelming for people who have a life review. Not everyone has a life review, by the way. But he said, I was also the receiver of my own actions. I saw what I did to the persons that I killed. And I saw that not only from their perspective, but also from the perspective of the women of these people, because they were mostly men, and the children of these men. So that, and he saw it from their perspective. But the point is that he was a very, well, he's mentioned himself. He said, I'm a very bad person, but yet he had a blissful NDE. So that this is, and there are more of these stories. This is a confirmation of the fact that you cannot say that only bad people will have distressing NDEs and good people will have a blissful one. So if someone has a distressing NDE, you cannot say that was a really bad person. That's simply, you cannot say that. That's what we find in our scientific research.
Which, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, and yet Kathy McDaniel was on the show at one point, but that actually that's not who I was thinking of when I was talking about the one NDE experience I heard. This was another woman who she was partying in the woods with some friends, and she had an NDE while there, whether it was um not substance related or not, I don't know.
Mm.
She didn't really specify on that, but I mean, she said that all of a sudden the woods became gray and dark, and
Mm.
a pit opened up in front of her in the woods, and there was fire, and I mean, it
Yeah,
it
you have gruesome examples, gruesome, yeah, NDEs, really bad NDEs. But yeah, so but the point is also that there are NDEers who explicitly hear that we all go home, and home is where the unconditional love is. And one NDEer explicitly heard that there is no hell and purgatory. So in that case, the Catholic Church was wrong, and because we believe in purgatory and hell, and the Protestants were wrong because you only believe in hell. You don't have purgatory, I think. No,
no, we never. Purgatory was always a
you
pure Catholic
immediately
thing. We
go
were
to
taught.
hell or in heaven. So there's no in between.
I mean, a lot of us always question, well, what if purgatory is just Earth? Like, what if that's where you're stuck? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's, I mean, it's an interesting theory, but, and yeah, I mean, it's there. I mean, I've heard there is a life review. I've always heard there's a life review in NDEs, and I mean, I don't know how I would take that, honestly. If having to look back on my life, I don't know how I'd feel about it, like completely. Like if it was, if it, I don't know, I think it would mostly be good. I haven't done too much bad in my life, so I think it would mostly be good. But I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, though. They weren't really bad mistakes, but they were
Everyone
mistakes,
makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
and I don't know if I'd want to see those mistakes again. That's the thing, though. Like, it took a long time to overcome those mistakes, and I don't think I'd want to go back and watch them through somebody else's eyes. But maybe it would give me a perspective that I wouldn't mind having. Maybe I don't know. We'll
But
find
there
out
are
someday. Hope.
also stories of NDEers who have had their NDE. Like, for instance, this Boy Scout who drowned and had his NDE, and he said he had his NDE in the presence of an angel. So they both looked upon his life as it played out, and then when it was over, and that goes really quick, huh? That is in an instant. And you get to see everything, every detail, and you can zoom out, and you have these stories that are like that. But when it was over, he said to the angel, "Well, I hope I'm not going to be judged too severely." And then the angel said, "Well, you're judged by the most powerful judge there is." And then the Boy Scout got a little bit weary, and then he said, "And when is that going to happen?" And the angel said, "Well, it just happened. The judge is you." So just as an example that if there is a judge, then it's you. There's another story, for instance, that comes to my mind, that there is a woman who saw her live review and then wasn't particularly satisfied with everything she did. Like, we all will not be satisfied with everything we did. We all make mistakes. We all do loveless things to others. So there must be some in your life. There are in my life too. So, but she said, when I saw that, and I was like, how can they like me for this? And then she said, they applauded me for being on earth, for being brave enough to go into this earth-like environment and experience life. And they just simply loved every bit of my life. So that's also another point of view. But it doesn't mean that we can go about and do bad things to others. Just like you, like if some people like to do bad things to others, then that's not what it's all about. Because the nice things you do that add love to the world will also increase the energy, will also be uh, met with enthusiasm in on the other side. And the things that take away love, you're not judged. They are going to be neutral about that. There's no, as we have in religions, you are not going to be punished anyhow. Not that's consistently said in most of the NDEs.
You know, but as we're talking about life reviews here, I, ca- you know how amazing it would be if that was actually like a podcast or TV show, and like people getting life reviews, and that was actually like some kind of form of media. Like that would be an interesting media form, I would say. Because I mean, and it's not. And see, the mistakes I was talking about are not exactly like things I did that were my fault. Even it was more uh, me being foolish and taken advantage of multiple times in life at a younger age. So, I mean, that's I would not want to see that again. I can't say I'd want to see that again because it was like it's a painful time in your life when you realize that you've been taken advantage of for a year or for however long it may be. Like you're just like, oh, come on. Like it's what like I would just be like slapping my head if I went back to that, being like looking at it like, ah, you idiot, why'd you fall for it? Like the amount of stuff you wasted and time you wasted. Like, oh my God. Good morning, Harley. Thank you for watching as always. And I mean, it's just, I mean, have I'm gonna mess up his name because I always do it. Killen McFuckinger. Have you heard of him?
No, sorry.
Oh, I mean, I know it's perfectly fine. Kellen McFuckinger, that's his name. But he's he is another famous NDE case, and I mean, he has a podcast of his own. He has been on more podcasts than I ever could count in my life. I mean, he was one of my first, well, early guests, I should say. And I mean, his NDE basically was him. He was in a hospital. He was dying. He wasn't a good guy. Like he was very much into drugs and neglected his children and all that before he had his NDE. And his NDE, he was in the hospital when it happened, and he sat in a dark room for what's basically 3 days in real time, and talking to a shadow in a doorway. And I mean, the shadow kept saying, "Are you ready to come home?" And like he just kept saying, "I don't want to go home. I have more to do." Like they had this discussion for 3 days with this voice because he couldn't even see it really. It was just a voice in a light in a doorway of light, and he basically was just saying like, you sure?" Like he's like, you could come home, and he's like, "No, I have things to do. I don't want to go home yet. I have to stay here." And now he is a self-help coach. He's a life coach. He speaks out in public like crazy. I gotta actually get back with him on social media because it's been a while since I've seen anything he's posted. But he's a really great guy. He has a lot of wisdom, but it took an NDE for him to turn his life around because his life
Yeah,
was. I basically compared him to Frank Gallagher from Shameless because that's the way he described his life before his NDE. So I mean,
but that
that kind of
happens to
man.
many people. When they have their when they have their NDE, they change totally. They aren't the same person again. And that he stayed there in 3 days. That's interesting too, because in on earthly terms, that would be just a nick of a second or so, or maybe a few minutes, or maybe an hour or so. But for him, it may have felt for more than 3 days. And the interesting thing is that time on the other side seems not to be the same as it does as it happens on Earth. Or some quotes are like, time is there all at the same time. Or it is not in time, it's between time. Or
Yeah,
many people say there is no time. But it's interesting that in this case, he was invited to go home. And because home is where most people, most NDEers know that home is the other side. That's the side where there's unconditional love. You're invited to go there. Everyone is going there. Everyone is being invited to go there. But he wanted to stay. And that's another interesting thing. There are NDEers that are given the choice to come back or to stay in the light. And some, well, we don't know if people want to stay. Of course, then they die. But there are a lot of stories where people say, well, I'd like to go back. Like in this case, the example that you just gave. And sometimes people don't want to go back, but they are shown what their purpose is, and that it's not over, and that before they came to Earth, as a baby in this body, that they agree to do certain things, because everyone has a task. Everyone has a task. If you don't have a task, if you everyone is important. So if you were not important, you would not be here. If you don't have a task, you wouldn't be here. You would go back home. That's If your task is over, you go back home. That's the idea. And that is being
Ex-
said so often.
exactly, which I mean that right there actually brings us to that'll bring us to a good that's a good segue because what you're talking about basically is fate. We're all fated to do certain things in this life that were determined before our spirit, soul, whatever
Yeah.
anybody wants to call it, before we were put into a earthly body. Like we are all fated to do things in this lifetime. We're supposed to learn certain things in this lifetime. We're supposed to accomplish certain things. Maybe we're supposed to bring forth a child in this life that has even more better purpose than we do. But maybe it's just our purpose to bring forth that child and raise it. So I mean, fate is a very real thing. I've always been a big believer in it, and I mean, I don't even need to tie religion to it. Like fate is just fate. Like it's the way the universe works. We're all meant to do certain things in life, and
Yeah, but fate is also difficult. If you let me explain that a little bit more, because we do have free will. That's a thing that I understand from NDEs. We do have free will, although if you the idea of fate arises because apparently some people see the future. They see how things will play out, and that actually happens. Either they see that as a medium on Earth, or they see it during their NDE. There are a lot of stories of NDEers who have seen things going on in the future, either personally or on a grander scale, like in politics or in with wars and name it. But that actually those things happen, and you have to understand it is like it's difficult to have. Free will on one side, but on the other side, things in the future seem to play out. But a friend of mine here in the Netherlands who had an NDE, she said, you have to see it from a different angle. Uh, on Earth, when you are in front of your decision, you don't know what to do. You either go left or right. But you don't know yet today. And tomorrow you need to take the decision. But on the other side, they also see the future because there is no time, or time is all there at the same time. So they can see at the same time you thinking, what shall I do? And the next day knowing what you want to do. And she said, she compared that to a situation where you are in an airplane. If you're in Amsterdam, I live in Amsterdam. If you're in Amsterdam, you cannot see Haarlem. Haarlem is a city next door to Amsterdam. It's like 11 miles away. You cannot see Haarlem. If you're in Haarlem, you cannot see Amsterdam. But if you're in an airplane, you have a total different point of view. You can see both cities at the same time. And that's also with time, because time for us is linear. It goes only in one direction. We cannot change anything by it. But on the other side, they can see through time and they see what happens. But the fact is still that we have a task to do. There is a reason why you are on Earth, why I am on Earth, why your listeners are on Earth. We all are important because we are here. We chose to be here and we have things to do.
exactly. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of mediums on this podcast. So yes, I mean mediums. They're very, very special, important people in this world. I believe. I mean, I think. they are meant to guide others to the right path. And
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, are
Well,
they
they
right?
have the ability to look through time for one or other reason. I don't know how that works, but they seem to be linked into this other world, and they can, well, they can see through a crack of the door, or how you want to put it in words. I don't know. It's they can see through time.
They can. I mean, whether it's just like a glimpse into like the strands of time and fate, or if it's just, or if they have guides. I mean, a lot of them have spirit guides. A lot of them talk
Yeah,
to angels, archangels. So maybe they get this information from a more otherworldly source. But
yeah.
see,
But
but
we are all guided. Hey? We are all guided, but they have the ability to, well, to have contact with their guides. In principle, we all have that ability, but they are better because perhaps for, I don't know, for what other reason. I know of someone in Amsterdam. She's a wonderful medium, and she was able to do this already before her NDE, but her NDE made it more possible for her, made it more, yeah, to the point. And every NDEer, in principle, will see an advancement in mediumship. Some people less, and some people very much so. They can see through time, or they can understand what other people feel. They are more intuitive, know more things, what other people, what happened to other people. So that's one of the after effects of NDEs. It's very interesting. There are so many funny after effects too. This is one of them, I think. It's as if the crack in the door, or the door opened for them to see the other side, but it closed, but not all the way. It didn't close all the way, and they still have some kind of contact with the other side.
yeah, I mean, and a lot NDEs from what I've read and what I've understood from people talking about them, they tend to kind of hasten up towards the spiritual awakening that everybody is supposed to have at some point in their life. Because I mean, every medium, every psychic will tell you anybody can do what they do. It's
Yeah.
just you have to have your spiritual awakening. You have to awaken your mind, and your third eye has to open. And then, I mean, there's a thousand different ways to phrase it, but basically, your mind has to open, and you have to realize you have the ability to do this. You just have to embrace it, and you have to start practicing it. And the more you do it, the more you get better at it.
It's
I
like
mean,
going to the gym. If you go to the gym often, you will get big muscles. If you practice this a lot, you will be better at your mediumship. And in principle, everyone can do that.
yeah, I mean, or just walk 250-pound dogs every day like I do, and then that gives you muscles too. But that's my gym. But what I meant with fate was like, I mean, we do have free will. I 100% agree. The way I look at fate, and this is, I always kind of get crap for this, but I mean, if you picture the Disney movie Hercules, it's the best way I can describe it because it's what I saw as a kid, and it's how I kind of still picture it to this day. The three fates can cut certain strands. There's certain strands that are golden that they can't cut. They're too strong to cut.
Hmm.
I think the golden strands are what we're fated to do, and those things can't change and won't change. I think the other strands are where we have free will, and I think those strands we can break them if we choose to go a different way than what was originally thought. So that's how I play out the whole free will and fate thing. I kind of see the three fates from Greek mythology sitting there cutting the strands with scissors, and like, just, I mean, that's how I see it, because we can choose to do certain things. I mean, I like to think, and I've been told I was fated to start this podcast because it was to get people's voices out there and let them be heard. And I think it is one of those golden strand type of things where I was going to start this event at some point in my life. It wasn't going to be exactly when I did, maybe not, but it just kind of fell into my lap that way, and I kind of just ran with it. So, but we all had free will. I mean, there were plenty of times in my life where I should have made other choices and I didn't, and that was my free will being enacted. And whether I whether it was stupid to not to exert my free will at that point, or smart, who knows? You never know. You never know the path not traveled, unless you until your life review. But it's just I don't know. It's just fate is a funny thing. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
you could sit there contemplating all day what you should have done, what you could have done differently, but it's just sitting there contemplating. It's not going to do anything for you except waste your time.
No. So yeah, so all the quotes that I gave to you are like the one from the woman who said it's like being in a plane is in my book. That's this is the impressions of near death experiences. There are hundreds of quotes in my book of NDEs, and then it's interesting to see that. Actually, I think it's a very good book, not because I wrote it, but because of the NDEs that are in the book. They actually wrote those quotes, and there is a chapter on distressing NDEs that we spoke about, and also there are things about fate and time. And there's even a woman mentioned in here that after her NDE, she could see things happening in the future, and she always was right, and no one believed her until she started writing herself emails where there's a timestamp, and she said, well, this and this is going to happen. She, for instance, saw the plane that had to land in the Hudson River. You might remember that there was a movie made out of it. She saw that before it happened, and she wrote herself an email with a timestamp, and so she could say later, "I saw this already happening." So, yeah, if that's also the thing with fate. That's a funny thing. And another thing that's very important, that's also one of the examples in my book, is that there is that you have effect everywhere, and you have a ripple effect. Whatever you do, it goes beyond where you are. To give you an example of a woman in the Netherlands who was who experienced the war in our country, and after the war she was a very small child in the war, but after the war she went to school, and she had friends, and one of the friends had lice in the hair, so these crawling
Yeah.
monsters. And at that time we had nothing. We were a war-torn country. There was no shampoo, nothing, so you had to do that manually, take them out. And she asked one of the girls to so this girl, this little school friend, had the lice, and she asked the NDEer, can you please help me? Now the NDEer made a big fuss out of it, and later in her life she saw that particular point in her life review, and she didn't particularly like it because it was like she stabbed her school friend in the heart. And she felt it from the other side. She felt it from the school friend's side. And then she noticed that it was really tough. It was really, she didn't like it. She was ashamed of it, that she did that she had done that. And she saw that it had a ripple effect. It went further than only this school friend. And she said the most horrible part of me seeing what I did wrong, what I had done wrong, is that I saw there were options, there were other possibilities that I could have done. I could have chosen something else. So there's free choice again. She could have chosen a nicer way of doing it with her school friend. She could have said to her, let's go somewhere quiet, and then we'll settle this. And then the bond between the two would have been bigger, and it would have given more love into the world. And that's the point that she felt terrible about. That really hurt her. Not so much the fact that she had to experience herself what she did to their school friend, but that the fact that there were other ways that she just neglected. So
If
that learns us all that we all have opportunities or choices to make, free will, and better do the choices in a loving way. And now I say this, it's difficult for me too. I mean, it's difficult for everyone, I suppose.
it is, I mean, we all have everybody in life has choices they made they regret. I mean, it's just part of life, but either they made you stronger or they made you weaker. It's just that's the way it goes. I mean,
No,
hopefully they made you stronger. If I mean, that's mistakes are nothing but chances to learn. So hopefully they made
exactly,
you stronger. I
exactly.
mean, if you look at mistakes as if you hold them in your head as a long time as, oh, I should have done that. That was stupid. Like if you're just gonna weigh yourself down with that for the rest of your life, then you're never gonna fully amount to what you're supposed to do. You're just gonna be trapped in the past. And as anybody will tell you, that's not a way to live. That's not a
No,
way to
we have
live.
to go further. We have to go in the future. We have, if you did things wrong now, then redo the reset. That's and then go on for the future and do it differently.
Well, as someone who has talked to many people who had NDEs, I have to ask, what is your views on reincarnation?
Ah, that's now you're asking me personally, I think.
Yes.
There are NDEs that say they felt reincarnation is there. But I've also spoken to NDEs who say, I don't feel that. That's not the case. So, and scientifically, it was established that the percentage of people that believed in reincarnation after their NDE is the same as in the general public. So it doesn't say much. What my point of view on this is, I've been thinking about that really a lot. What I think the case is that we are all one. There are a lot of people that a lot of NDEers that say that they either feel that we're at least thoroughly interconnected with each other, or they go further and they say we are God or we are all one. And I can give you examples in my book. There's a whole chapter about this, about being one. And you have to think then, what happens if you take that to extremes? If we are really one, if I am actually you, if I'm the trees in the garden, or we are all this one thing, why would there be a need of reincarnation? Because the oneness has led or leads all the lives there are. So you can also see it like, suppose a child is born. So what goes into this child? There's only one. That's, call it God or call it the supreme one, which I like better because God is colored from a religious point of view. So the
Yeah.
supreme one goes into that a little child and starts its life. But the supreme one has also been Nefertiti, has been Napoleon, has been the fish woman on the market in Amsterdam in the 1600s, has been anyone in history. So, you know, I'm open to surprises if I go and go to heaven and then see what happens then. But I think it's not necessary for reincarnation to be there. People that feel that they have reincarnated may very well tap into the knowledge of a real person that had been on Earth. That's what I think. And maybe that person that has lived before on Earth and that they can tap into has specific things that they have to work out in their present life. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have actually been that other person in history, but it's an important person for them in this life they are leading now. So I hope I can make myself a little bit understandable by saying all this. I think we are one, and there is no need for reincarnation. We already have all the lives, or the supreme one leads all the lives, also the animal lives and the plants and what you have. It's all one. And maybe give an example of one of the quotes in my book of a woman who had her NDE and was in the other side and had to go back. And she wants to go back because she had a child to look after. And she said, it's so big there. And I knew everything. I understood everything. Everything made so much sense. And it's incredible that we don't see it while we are on Earth. It's in plain sight. Oh, if we knew, we could know that. We could see everything. And she said, I'm going to, she wanted to remember one sentence that would say it all. what she saw on the other side, and wanted to take that with her on Earth, because she knew she couldn't bring all that knowledge back to her body by going back to Earth. And then she said the one sentence that she remembered and kept on to was, all is everything and everything is one. All is everything and everything is one. And she said, it's like human beings are crawling on as ants on a human body, just as a comparison. As an ant, you cannot see the whole body, but you're still walking on that body. You fail to see that whole body. And that's how we live here on Earth. We are part of this bigness, this oneness, but we fail to see it. It's in plain sight.
Which, I mean, it's interesting because that's a message that religions and other spiritual paths have been trying to teach for a long time. And I mean, but if we're, see, because I'm a pretty big believer in reincarnation. I've heard enough experiences where it kind of makes sense, but it kind of could tie into that too. Because I mean, we all may be one, but who's to say that our individual essence doesn't get recycled in a way? I mean, if we're all here already, maybe that's what it is when a baby's born, like, or when a baby animal's born. Like, what if it's all one and it's just we're getting recycled constantly? I mean, there's other variations of reincarnation that involve extraterrestrials and all that, and I mean that's I believe some of that may be possible, but I don't fully subscribe to anything until I see proof. I'm a science. I'm a
That's
science.
also how I see it. I'm open to things like I am open to also the fact that there may be reincarnation, but I'm also open to something else. I think that the other side is so different that we cannot understand it fully. So if we put labels on things like reincarnation or oneness, we may not perhaps understand it all because we are in a lesser dimension. We cannot see everything. So, and we don't have the words. That's also what NDEs say. We fail the right words and the concepts to explain what is on the other side. They feel it's ineffable. There are no words enough, no concepts enough to describe it in our language, what they see on the other side. So maybe a reincarnation is not all the way how we think it is. Like it is always thought that we, in the future, we will reincarnate in a new body. Why? There is no time on the other side, or all time is at the same time. So that's another, those are just, we will never really understand the whole thing. The only thing that matters is that there is unconditional love, and that if I do something to you, I do it also to myself, because I can feel what it is I do to you as if I am you. So it's like it's a zero-sum game. Life is a zero-sum game. I cannot just do something to you and think I'm walking away from you. I don't care. That's not how it works. You will care when you will feel your life review. When you're on the other side, you will see the wholeness that you're just a part of, and your effect on everything else that matters. That's how I see it.
I mean, which honestly, there's a part of me that hopes that is 100% true, because all the people that, and I mean, all the people, this might be a little cynical even, but all the people that do bad out there, like the murderers,
Yeah, yeah,
the rapists, I mean, if they actually get to feel, like, I guess the best way to put it, if a killer gets to get a piece of himself killed at some point because he did this, because he killed somebody, if at some point in his life he actually gets to feel like part of himself basically died because of that. I mean, that's karmic justice in a way. That means that you do these bad things, guess what? It's coming back at you full fold in karma at some point. It may happen in life. It may happen after in an NDE or after we die. Like, it may be maybe that's when you finally get to feel the karmic justice, and maybe I mean, maybe these religions did base it off of something real. Maybe they did base it off of people who had NDEs back in biblical days, and
Yeah, but they
maybe they
maybe not explain it in the right words. Because the words get in the way. So if it's translated through a religion, you have many religions, and maybe they all say one part of the truth, but you don't get to see the whole thing.
exactly. I mean, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, look at the ancient Egyptians. When you die, your heart is weighed on a scale compared to a feather. I mean, that's just the same. That's another way of saying
Yeah,
you're going to be judged at the gates of heaven by Saint Peter. Like that's another way of saying it.
yeah.
And it's, I mean, yeah, the
In
Egyptian ways.
Islam, they also have that. You will be judged by your own skin. Your own eyes will testify against you. Your ears will testify against you. So it will all be there. But that's also what NDEs say. Every little bit of your life is still there. The difference is that you will not be judged. The purpose of a life review seems to be that you will become aware of what your position is or your place is on earth in the whole scheme of things. Apparently, that is the main purpose. And again, there is no one judging you, not even the people that you mentioned. In my talks, I always say you can think of someone you really despise. We all have people that we don't like. Maybe it's in politics, or if you want to see the wars going on, you take one side and you think the other side is horrible. Also, those people, they also will see their life review. They see how it is from the other side, but there will not be a judgment. I can only say what NDEs tell me. That's how it is. There is no judgment. That's what I believe also. And we all go home. That's the hopeful, a nice idea that we all go
I,
to this place.
I mean, maybe there is actually. This kind of just developed in my head, and I kind of like it. Maybe there's no judgment because we will be judging ourselves at that point. Like we will be judging ourselves fully, and that is punishment enough. Like
If
to
you feel what you did to others, and you think of the people no, let's say Putin or Hitler or whatever. Suppose they have to go through everyone they did something wrong to. That's a long stretch.
that's a long list. That's a long list. But I mean, I could. I mean, just picture Hitler in his afterlife having to go through the eyes of all those children and women
Yeah.
in concentration camps, and like I mean, it probably destroyed him. And I see that's the thing, though. I feel like people that are that evil, people that do that much damage to the world, there has to be some kind of penance. There has to be some kind of punishment of some kind. Because I mean, if there is a creator, if there is a supreme power, whatever you want to call it, why would he let something that horrible happen? And that has always been my problem with religion, honestly. That's
But
always been my problem with religion.
take this idea. If you follow what and some of the many of the NDEs say, we are all one. We are all part of oneness. Also, these people that you mentioned are part of that. So they are also the supreme one being in a body. And I sometimes, Hitler is really difficult to discuss.
Yeah.
Let's talk about someone else. If you have been born in one of the favelas of Sao Paulo, in a poor country, in a poor area, where you only have examples of men shooting other men, or hitting women, or doing all these things, then what kind of life will you be having? That's different from the life that you had. You were born in an affluent country, like myself. I had a very good upbringing, no real problems. I had my problems, of course, but like everyone. But it's difficult. It's different. It's totally different. I cannot compare the life that I lead with the life of someone in a country like I don't know. You have so many countries that are
I
poor.
mean, pick a South American or African country. I mean, just pick one. Like literally, just pick. Like it's there's. I know what you're saying because I mean, I grew up in the typical white American suburb life, and
Yeah.
we didn't have any real problems. Yes, I there were things that were not exactly like perfect, but I mean, there was no real problems. We didn't have to worry about bandits coming in our house in the middle of the night and killing us or taking our stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
like in some third world countries. Like it's just we had a secure life. Like it was a safe life. That's the difference. I mean, it's safety. I mean, it's growing up knowing you're safe versus growing up knowing having to live in fear. Like
And you
that's the
had good
difference.
examples to live up to. Your parents probably, or the teachers around you, or your family, whatever. You had good examples to live up to, like myself. But if you are born in a place where shooting and killing is normal, well, take any war. Take the children that are taken as soldiers in some African countries. If that's what your life is about, how can you expect someone to do good? And can you judge them by that? So I'm just putting some things on the table that are difficult. What I want to say is that everyone has a history, and what we do comes from somewhere, and that may be the reason for the Supreme One to be more lenient towards everyone.
I mean, I get that. I mean, I 100% get that. The extreme cases are always a little more debated because I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to bring it back to him, but I mean, he grew up. Yeah, I mean, he grew up in a poor, war-ridden country because he grew up after World War One, and he wanted to be an artist. He wanted to be an artist, and
And he
somehow
failed.
he failed miserably. But I mean, somehow he went from being an artist to being one of the worst dictators ever known. Which, I mean, that right there, like, I don't know how a supreme one would view that. I mean, I swear, like that's one of the questions I always said. If I ever get to meet, if there is a creator, if I ever get to actually talk to them, that's one of the questions I want to ask. Is like, how did this come to be? Like, what happened
Me
here?
too.
Like,
I had to ask that question too. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, there's a lot of examples out there. I mean, there's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I always like to kind of point towards Genghis Khan too, because like, but he is more of your example. He is more of your example because he was brought up in a world where that's what you do. You pillage, you rape, you plunder. That's what you do. There's nothing else in life but that, because otherwise you're not going to have land.
And he
And
did that massively. He killed so many people.
oh, I
That
mean,
yeah.
what do they say? Like, I think 40 or 50% of people on Earth have Genghis Khan's DNA in them. Like at this point, because he took over so much of the world
That's a
that
different story. He went around with a lot of women. Yeah, that's yeah.
well, I mean, and just the fact that over time, over generations, like that DNA just got passed and passed and passed and passed, and like in so many different parts of the world, that's just everybody. Like a lot of people have Genghis Khan DNA in them. Like that's just the way it is. I mean, I've because I went through a whole phase with ancestry because I was a donor baby. I was a sperm donor baby. So I went through ancestry and found that my biological family to some degree. And I mean, but that's one of the things. Like I've met people I talked to that were on ancestry too, and they're like, oh yeah, they're like I'm part Genghis Khan, I guess. But it's just like it's mind blowing, like the little things like that happen in history, and that's what always made me. I don't know if there is a creator. He's got a little bit of a sense of humor, I think. He has to.
That's one of the things that NDEs say. There's a great sense of humor on the other side, and this Supreme One does have that. Yeah.
I mean, he'd have to. He'd have to for this world to be the way it's gone over the last millennia. Like he'd have to have some humor to him, like or her or it, whatever you want to call it. But I don't want to genderize it. So, what after? I guess the best way to end this would be to ask this question. After all the NDEs you've heard about and written about in your three and more books, because I know you've written other books as well, what is the one lesson overall that everybody should know from that you've learned from all these NDE years? Like, what is the one thing that truly sticks out the most?
For me, it is oneness and unconditional love. And to tell this story that's also in my book, there are so many stories, so many quotes. This little girl of 8 who was abducted and was assaulted by 2 men. They tried to drown her. Um, when she was having her NDE, she saw an elderly man, and she said it couldn't have been anyone else than God. So you have to picture in NDEs there are all these images that pop up. So in this case, for her, the elderly man was God, and God said, "You have to go back to Earth, and life is not difficult. It's easy. There are 4 ingredients, and I'll tell you the ingredients." And he told the little girl of 8, Christina, what the ingredients are, and that's love, be loved, just be, and experience life. And that's it. It's love, be loved, and those are difficult. You need to do something for it. You need to love others. You need to allow others to love you. But the other 2 are maybe easy. Just be and experience life. Whatever you do, you are, and whatever you do, you experience life. It seems to be like experiencing life. That's what we understand also from life reviews. Experiencing life is good enough. Everyone is good enough as they are. Every listener too.
Well, that actually is a beautiful message to go out on. I love it. So there you go, folks. Be who you are and be proud of it. Be happy. And life gets hard, but you're meant to deal with those hardships in some way to teach you and to make you move forward. So everything passes in time. But where can people find you, Robert? Where can they find your books? Just basically promote yourself to the fullest.
Yeah, the books can be found on Amazon. It's called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and that's what it actually does. All the quotes give impressions, and people have to come to their own conclusion with all these impressions. And they can find me on my website. It's Bob Copus, Bob, and then Copus, COPPES.com. And there is a form that they can fill out if they have questions, and I'll always answer questions.
Well, there you go, folks. And I'm sure if any of my listeners have had an NDE, he would love to hear about it as well. I mean, there's always more lessons to learn from other people. So that's right there. And I want to thank Robert for coming on because it's been a fascinating hour, great discussions,
For me
and I
too, it
learned.
was really wonderful. Thank you for being on your show. Very interesting.
Oh, my pleasure to have you on. And folks, you all know where you can find me by now. If you don't, well, this is where I usually shame you for it, but in today's lesson, I don't think I could shame. So disappointment maybe, but no shame. But check the outro if you really don't know. It's everywhere you can find me is in the outro, and I will be back in about an hour and a half with another interview because today's a busy day. But and plenty more to come this week as well. So until next time, everybody, have a good morning. Go get your coffee. Lord knows I've been drinking mine.